Hey folks, welcome back to Honey Money SG. Today I will be sharing my thoughts about retiring in Malaysia. Now I know a lot of people have been interested in this kind of topic about retiring in another place compared to Singapore, because while Singapore is actually a really great place to work, we have high income, we have a lot of job opportunities, but maybe it's not a really great place to retire because the cost of living here is really too high. And in most recent news, we can't even import freshly chilled chickens from Malaysia. So a lot of people has been contemplating whether they want to retire in Singapore or not. So I'll be here to just share my thoughts about retiring in Malaysia regarding the lifestyle, the cost, the living habits that you have to adapt to. It will not be a really in-depth research, but I'll just share what I have here, right? So let's start with the cost of living in Malaysia. I'm sure as Singapore residents, we can all agree that Malaysia is a really cheap place to live in because 1 SGD is almost equivalent to 3.2 Malaysian ringgit right now. I know previously we are always talking about 1:3, but now the Malaysian ringgit has been so weak that Singapore dollars has appreciated over it close to 3.2, That's quite a good arbitrage opportunity. Let's talk about property first. And if you really want to compare it to Malaysia, it's really no comparison, right? I mean, let's just take a look at the private condominium nearest to Singapore, the R&F residences. I was just looking the other day at Property Guru Malaysia. So if you are like renting a 3-bedroom apartment in R&F Cove, it is actually around 2,000 ringgit per month. And if we really convert it back to Singapore dollars, how much are we talking about? Maybe 600 over Singapore dollars for a 3-bedroom private condominium apartment with facilities. Of course, you can't compare the same level of quality between Malaysia condominiums and Singapore condominiums because Malaysian condominiums, most of them are poorly maintained after a few years because there's just so much land to build property. But I'm just giving you like a simple cost comparison, right? How much can you get in Singapore versus how much you could get in Malaysia. But if you want to rent a property in Singapore, maybe a 3-bedroom private condominium will cost you like 3,000, 4,000 or even $5,000 a month depending on your location. So that's just the price disparity, right? And let's talk a bit about transportation. And as you know, public transportation is almost inexistent in Malaysia unless you are in big cities like Kuala Lumpur or Penang. So I think it's better to always drive your own private transport. With like 30,000 ringgit, you can easily get a Pearl 2 Myvi. And in Singapore, you don't even need to think about it because we have something called Certificate of Entitlement that allows you to use your vehicle for 10 years. And that paper itself is already costing like 70,000 Singapore dollars. And if you add the car price in with the COE, it's probably coming to like 120,000 Singapore dollars to allow you to use the car for 10 years. Whereas vehicles in Malaysia, no expiry, no time limit, just use as long as you want it. Also, because the cost of living is cheaper in Malaysia, the wages are also lower, right? That means the services that you can do there is much cheaper as well. You want to go for hairdressing services, you want to go for massage services, you want to like relax in a villa, you want to enjoy exotic and luxurious food options. There's also quite plenty of options within your budget. So it's really like a lifestyle change and quality change, right? Not really about the cost, but about how much more you could get with the same amount of money. And don't even get me started on food because subjectively, Malaysian food is the best for me in Southeast Asia. At least it's really the locals handling all the cooking, unlike in Singapore where a lot of foreigners are really managing our hawker and food court stores. But cost is not really everything, right? We have to look into other aspects of life because if cost is just a concern, then I think you underrated one very important benefit of Singapore, and that is the safety. Now, Singapore is touted as one of the safest nations or even cities in the world. That means that as a single female traveler, you can actually go out in the midnight and it's really safe to walk on our streets. I can't say the same for any other kind of cities in this world, but for Singapore, I can vouch that you will be safe as long as you walk within the main roads. Not only that, we also have a high level of security. Our police officers and civil defense firefighters are one of the most ready force in Singapore. And because Singapore is so small, right, if anyone commits a crime, you can be sure that they will be captured within 24 hours because of our tight security systems. Anyway, with regards to healthcare, at least I could say that Singapore has a high level of healthcare standard, but Malaysia is not low either. In fact, if you look at the private healthcare services in Malaysia, some of them are really quite good, on par with Singapore, just that the cost is much cheaper. In Singapore, if you don't even have a private medical insurance or integrated shield plan, be prepared to fork out really large amount because your MediShield Life is just not going to cover the entire expensive medical bills. So I read online somewhere that some hospitals even accept MediSave for payment because they have linkages with the Singapore government or something like that. So if you are interested in the area, you can do more research on that lah. But now I do want to talk a bit about the lifestyle difference, because fundamentally you are changing a city lifestyle to a more laid-back lifestyle in Malaysia. I'm not talking about big cities like Kuala Lumpur. I mean, if you really want to retire in Kuala Lumpur, there's really not much difference from that with Singapore. I would rather you live in Singapore if you prefer city life, because the traffic is really insane at Kuala Lumpur. Don't say I never warned you. Now, if you do want to retire and escape from the city lifestyle of Singapore, really just explore a few options other than Kuala Lumpur. Even Penang is a much better place, more laid back, the people are nicer. Even in Johor Bahru, I think the lifestyle will be a good change from Singapore's as well, because it's really hectic right here in Singapore. You don't really feel really relaxed. I think everybody is just having a really fast pace of life that keeps you moving, like if you're not moving, you just feel really left out from the society. And because you're living in Malaysia and you most likely have a private vehicle, you can really drive to scenic spots that are not accessible by public transport. If you want to go to like a water quarry, you want to go to the national park, you want to go to other states to explore their food, their culture, the people, the language, I think it's a very diverse culture in Malaysia. So Malaysia is really a very rich place of culture and food, if you ask me. A lot of places that you can explore. The country is so big, right? If you don't like living in this city, you can just move to a neighboring one or somewhere up further north ahead, so that you can just explore different lifestyles and see which one suits you better. Lastly, let's talk a bit about the visa requirements and tax, right? Because I think this is the fundamental thing that you should look out for if you're considering retirement. Because as a Singapore passport holder, you can only stay in Malaysia for 30 days via a social visit or tourist visa. But if you want to stay longer than 30 days, you do have to look for longer term options. And one of it is the MM2H, Malaysia my second home. And the MM2H policy has been changed to such ridiculous terms, like you need a minimum of 40,000 ringgit per month to be qualified to apply for the MM2H visa. I mean, if someone is earning 40,000 Malaysian ringgit, which translates to around 13,000 Singapore dollars, why would he not retire in Singapore instead? $13 can do wonders in Singapore. But one thing you must know is that there is another policy of MM2H which is under the Sarawak state. If you go and Google for MM2H Sarawak, I think they have a different set of requirements that is much more lenient than the official MM2H visa. So you can consider that route if you want to apply for MM2H. And we cannot forget tax residency if you are still earning an income to supplement your retirement life. Fundamentally, we still want to remain as a Singapore tax resident. And the eligibility to remain as a Singapore tax resident is that you need to stay at least 183 days in Singapore. That means you cannot travel so much across the world that you don't qualify to be a Singapore tax resident. Because I think Singapore tax is one of the lowest in the world, right? I mean, I would very much want to remain as a Singapore tax resident as long as I am drawing income from Singapore. So there is something that you have to figure out if you want to consider retiring in Malaysia. So to conclude, right, living in Malaysia, retiring there has its pros and cons compared to Singapore. You really have to weigh your costs and benefits to see which one is more advantageous for you. Now, I'm speaking it from a single perspective, or maybe no kids perspective, because it also means you and your partner can really move around easily. But what if you have kids? I think that will change the whole equation, because where are your kids going to live? Where are they going to school? Are they going to go to a school in Malaysia or Singapore? I think that's just some family matters that are more complicated than what my video is discussing. Also, if you have not thought about early retirement yet, then maybe you can consider watching my video over here, because I'll talk about my plans leading up to my financial independence, retire early life. With that, thank you for watching. My name is Christopher. This is Honey Money SG, steering young adults to financial independence.